Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. I mentioned in my last video that I had COVID recently. I just got over it, and wouldn't you know, a family member in my house got COVID, so I got moved out of the master bedroom so they could kind of self-quarantine down there and have access to the bathroom and everything. So my life's been in turmoil the last day or two, but I'm determined to get this video done. So thanks for bearing with me. Hopefully this will be useful. So the theme of this video is access to water. Not short term, because short term I've done videos before where everybody gets bottled water, fills their bathtub, whatever you got to do. I use 2-liter soda bottles. If I know a hurricane's coming or something like that, I fill like 20 of those up just so we have some for 2-3 days. This video is more for medium to long term events where you're out a couple days, you've blown through all of your potable water that you've stored up and everything, and for whatever reason a line break or something happens where you're without water, boil water notice, whatever's going on, right? So as a prepper, you should have some kind of backup system to obtain water on a semi-regular basis for, like I said, medium to long-term events. So the first thing I'm going to cover real quickly, I'm just going to talk to it. I have no practical video to show you on this, but it's non-potable water. And that's water that's not fit for human consumption as it is, right? Without treatment or anything. Sources of this, you could go out anywhere and grab it from a lake, stream, pond, retention pond. You can get it from roof runoff, pools, even if they're, all algaed up. And you'd filter it out, obviously, if there's big contaminants in there with some cheesecloth or some cloth, and filter it, roughly. And you can use this for doing laundry in a bucket, flushing your toilet, pour the water into the back of the tank, and then you can flush the toilet and let gravity do the rest. You can wash non-food contact surfaces like your floors, anything that needs cleaning around the house, that type of thing. So that is non-potable, but the focus of this video is going to be on potable water. And we're going to do some practical applications. These are the methods that I use. I have planned for these and I practice them. And I'm going to show you that in the video. So we're going to use my irrigation pump or sprinkler pump, and that well we're going to draw water out of that using a hand pump. I'll show you how we hook it up and use it and everything. A small 12-volt DC transfer pump that you can hook up to a battery. And then the final thing we're going to do is use a tarp, and we're going to tie up a tarp and let it funnel water into a bucket from rain. So let's get high and low techy. So one method for obtaining water that I mentioned was an irrigation pump. This one actually waters my lawn. It's my sprinkler pump, and you can see it here. What I did is I asked the plumber when they came out and worked on my sprinkler system last time, I had some split pipes and stuff. I had to get it kind of updated. So what I asked them to do was put a valve on it so I could isolate the sprinkler heads from the actual tap, the pump that goes down into the ground here. So the water comes up through here, draws through the pump, and then goes out there. Of course, you have the option to hook a hose up or something like that if you wanted to. So that's where we're going to draw the water from. This is coming from a shallow irrigation well, and the first method is to use a hand pump. So what I did is, like I said, I cut off the valve already. I isolated it from the rest of the system. So now it's just a straight shot from here down through the pump, down into the actual well shaft where the water is. So what we're going to be doing first is using a hand pump. Old-fashioned way, obviously, but it's still effective. This depends on your well depth, obviously. So you can try this to see if this works for you. I think my well is probably, 30 to 50 feet deep. So it was put in before I bought this house, so I'm not really sure of the depth. But anyways, this happens to work for me. This is one of the methods, so I'm going to go ahead and show you this. Now with these pumps, it's important to prime it because there's a leather gasket inside that actually creates the suction for the cylinder here. So, like I said, I've already primed it. Lets that leather swell up, and it creates the seal to create the vacuum. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a couple pumps, and as you notice, I'll be pumping into one of my non-potable water, my blue jugs, or the blue. to keep the fittings very tight on the hose, because if you get a little bit of air vacuum in there, there's a little bit of air in there now, I can tell that's not real smooth action, it's a little bit of bubbling. So, you know, still effective, but it could be a little bit better. So, it doesn't really take a long time. Just you have to have some, you know, this is just a temporary setup with the cinder blocks. But as you can see, there's fittings on the bottom, plumbing on the bottom of this to make it fit the hose. So, once you get the jack, so it's not the easiest thing to do, but it's the old-fashioned way, and it still works to this day. Very reliable. Just make sure that if you do go this route, you have a couple of the extra leather gaskets in case one of these fails or rips. This goes for about $70 to $80 right now, and then you have to get the plumbing pieces to adapt it to be able to fit a post. So, good way to go. Now the second way that I have to access water out of my irrigation well is via the little transfer pump. So these are 1/10 horsepower. One is 12 volt DC, and that's what I'll be using now. The other is 1/10 horsepower, but it's AC. And I'll show you how those come into play in just a minute. So this one I'm going to set aside because this is the AC. It plugs into a regular outlet. And this is the one we're using right now. So it's 12 volt DC, so if you have a large enough battery, you can get this to run. So as you can see, I have my portable solar power station generator here. I actually use this to run a window AC in one room of my house after hurricanes. It's also good for tailgating, etc. It's a big unit. It can handle a lot. So, but as you can see, it's got AC USB sockets. It's got a light built in for little headlights when I'm rolling it around. And like I said, if you're interested in this build, you can check it out in one of my other videos. But right now I'm coming off this. It also has a 12 volt, you know, it's got an inverter for AC, and it's also got a fuse block for 12 volts. So what I do is I take this little transfer pump. Once again, we're at my sprinkler or my irrigation pump. I have it all, the valve opened, the valve to the other sprinkler heads and the other end of the system closed, so it's straight down from the valve down through the pump down into the well. So I hooked up, that is a 12 volt DC battery. Like I said, I have it bypassing the inverter going into the fuse block, so I got 12 volts at these two leads I have coming out. I have the pump alligator clipped onto those leads, and I have my hoses hooked up. That's my inlet, that's my outlet going into my blue non-potable bucket. So we're going to go ahead and turn it on. You can hear it pumping. It is pulling a little bit of air in, so maybe I don't have my connectors as tight as they should be, but you see we got some really good flow coming out of there. It's going to fill up this bucket in about 30 seconds. Let me turn this off. As I mentioned, I also have the AC version of this, and if I wanted to make it easier on myself, which I should have, I can pull that out, hook it up exactly the same. It's exactly the same, except it's a DC versus AC, and I could just wheel this thing out intact, top closed. I can turn it on and I can plug it into one of those, and my AC motor would do the exact same thing as this. Just have to hook it up. I could also use an extension cord from inside one of my other solar systems for the AC to run the pump from out in my backyard, or in my garage for my freezer system. So there's many ways that I can actually get water to pump out of there. So it's very valuable to have access to that type of water in medium to long length emergency situations. So we come out, we're gonna do a little bit of water harvesting here. We're expecting some good rain tonight, so what I did is I put this tarp up. I bought it, was $5, and I attached it with some paracord up the top in the bottom. It does fit a little wonky because the holes, the grommet holes, did not match up. So what I've done is I've taken it between my pergola. Let me step back and show you. And I have a kind of a trellis fence here that I built. I tied it off to both of those. Try to get as much surface area as I could, but like I said, it's a little off center and doesn't fit quite right because it wasn't really designed for this purpose, and I wasn't able to actually get the dimensions that I wanted for the tarp, so I made it work. So the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you have tension all around on the tarp, as much tension as possible to make it rigid so it doesn't flap around and doesn't have a chance to rip. So it's tied off at the top and it comes down and it terminates in this bucket right here. So what I'm trying to do is fill up this bucket with water. I put a t-shirt on there with a bungee cord. If you have cheesecloth or something like that, you could also use that. The reason I did that was to keep leaves, sticks, twigs, whatever might be blowing around here if it gets a little bit windy, out of the water. And the water builds up there, and then once it gets to a certain level, it goes through the eyelet right there and down and into the bucket. You know, drips through the t-shirt into the bucket. And I have it tied down with a brick. Once the water fills up enough, it'll create enough weight in here. Ooh, that's pretty heavy already. To hold it down. So I found out that what I had to do is, because I tied this off here, the water would come down and it would run down, and I was missing a lot of the water because it was running down here and running off the side. It would follow the down like a wick. It would follow it down and run off to the side. So what I did is I tied off right up on here with two little strings two little pieces of paracord heading down, so the water catches on there. Hopefully you can see, catches on that knot and then drips down. So it's a little drip area. All right, so let's take a look inside and see what we have, if we can get this off. It's gonna come off. Okay, so I don't know if you can tell, but it's about half full. And it's been a little over an hour, so not doing too bad. So after we get a full 5 gallons of water, you would take this and you would filter it or sanitize it appropriately, because rainwater is relatively pure, right? But as it makes its way down from the clouds through the atmosphere, it can pick up pollen, dust, microbes, anything that happens to be floating around in the air. The raindrops can catch and distribute down, as well as anything that happens to fall on the tarp or gets blown on the tarp, come down. So you always have little things in there, so it's best to filter or sanitize the water as appropriate. Okay, so now that we've gathered some water, we're back inside. Like I said, it's been a rough weekend. I got a huge it's a double iced coffee because it's just been crazy around my house the last couple of days. So before I forget, let me get this out of the way and say, if you like the content of my channel, you like my videos, please like the video. Please subscribe to my channel so you know when I have a new video coming out. And most importantly, I do these videos to help people. So if somebody that you know or love could benefit from this information, please share the video with them. Share my channel. I'm trying to share any knowledge that I've obtained over the years before I get too old and forget it. Quite honestly, everything that I've used or shown in this video, I will provide a link to in the description below. So now that you've gathered all the water, it's in a non-potable state most likely, right? You wouldn't be able to drink it or brush your teeth with it or anything. So what you want to do is you want to separate it. So what I do is I take some of the water that I've gathered and I keep that as my non-potable water. And what I do is I keep that in blue buckets with a capper on them. I know that I don't drink out of this. I don't use this for brushing my teeth, anything that's going to go into my mouth or my family's mouth. I do not use it. This is potable water used for flushing toilets, used for cleaning, used for doing laundry. All the non-potable water goes in blue buckets. And what I do is I take some of the water that I've gathered, that's non-potable, and I run it through either a filter. You know, you can use a Life Straw, Sawyer Mini, Sawyer Squeeze, or a purifier of your choice. It doesn't have to be these, but this is what I tend to use. A water purifier, right? The difference is the filter goes to 0.2 microns, doesn't usually get viruses out, so a more complete solution would be this. It goes down, it filters down to 0.02 microns, it gets human viruses and that type of thing out along with everything else. So after I filter it out, I take that water that I know is purified, sanitized, and I take it and I put it in white buckets. These are food grade buckets, and I know I have caps for them, so nothing flies in them or anything. So I put the potable water in there, and I know that I can use that for drinking, for brushing my teeth, anything that I'm going to need potable water for. Like I said, that's my method, that's what I do. So now that I've shown you my system, hopefully that'll get your wheels spinning and you can develop your own. Feel free to copy anything that I've done. You know, this is just the way that I do things. Everybody has their own, puts their own little spin on things, and that's fine. Whatever you need to do to prepare for you and your family is fine. And one more thing before I go, please don't forget to prep for your pets. See you next time.